In 2008, he became the face of a billion-dollar franchise. By 30, he was turning down Hollywood blockbusters and making art house films for a fraction of the price. This is how Robert Pattinson turned sudden fame into long-term freedom. When Twilight exploded onto the scene in 2008, Robert Pattinson wasn't exactly a household name. He had done a bit part in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, but nothing prepared him, or anyone, for what was coming. The franchise pulled in over $3.3 billion worldwide, and by the time it wrapped, Pattinson had more than $25 million just in base salary for the final films. Add in the back-end deals, and the total was likely much higher. He was in his early 20s with a bank account most actors don't see in a lifetime. That kind of success can mess with your head, especially when it comes fast. For Pattinson, the fame hit hard. He couldn't walk down the street without a crowd forming, and the spotlight felt more claustrophobic than glamorous. But financially, it set him up for life. He didn't have to say yes to anything just for the paycheck, and that gave him something most actors never get: real freedom. He could have stuck to safe roles, franchise spin-offs, studio dramas, or anything with a guaranteed box office draw. But even back then, it was clear he wasn't interested in following the expected path. The money let him step away from the machine without disappearing completely. He had options, and he used them. It wasn't just about escaping the Twilight label, it was about doing work that actually meant something to him, even if it didn't pay 8 figures. That decision shaped everything that came next, and it's the reason his career looks nothing like what anyone predicted back in 2012. He got rich, but that was just the starting point. But instead of chasing more blockbusters, Pattinson went in the opposite direction, and that's where the story gets really interesting. After Twilight, Robert Pattinson could have taken the obvious route, ride the wave of global fame, sign on for a few action blockbusters, and cash in. A lot of actors would have done exactly that. Instead, he did something unexpected. He started saying no. Big franchise offers came in, but he turned them down, choosing smaller, stranger films with directors who cared more about risk than box office returns. One of the first real shifts was Cosmopolis in 2012, directed by David Cronenberg. It was a slow, cerebral movie set mostly inside a limo about a billionaire watching his life unravel in real time. Not exactly what you'd expect from the guy who played a sparkly vampire. But that was the point. Pattinson didn't want to be stuck. And while the film didn't break records, it got critics to take him seriously. From there, he took more chances. In Good Time, directed by Safdie brothers, he played a desperate, chaotic man trying to pull off a heist and save his brother. The entire movie was shot in a gritty, high-pressure style that made you forget Pattinson had ever walked a red carpet. He earned real praise for it. People called it the best work of his career up to that point. Then came The Lighthouse, where he acted opposite Willem Dafoe in a black-and-white psychological drama that looked like it came from another century. It was weird, intense, and exactly the kind of thing that doesn't make sense unless you're committed to doing something different. The pattern was clear. He was building a new reputation, one careful role at a time. Not every movie made money, but they made something more valuable: credibility. And with that came offers that respected him as an actor, not just as a face. He had earned enough to be picky, and that gave him more than just artistic freedom. It opened the door to real wealth-building moves. When Robert Pattinson signed on to play Bruce Wayne in The Batman, a few eyebrows went up. This was the guy from Good Time and The Lighthouse, films that earned critical praise but never touched blockbuster territory. But Warner Bros. Knew what they were doing. Pattinson brought in a new kind of energy. Darker, more internal, and miles away from the polished superheroes people had gotten used to. The movie pulled in over $770 million worldwide, and Pattinson reportedly earned $3 million up front, with bonuses and back-end pay likely pushing that number much higher. This wasn't just about money, though. It was a calculated move. taking on Batman gave mainstream visibility again, but under his terms, director Matt Reeves had a specific vision, and Pattinson wasn't just showing up in costume, he was shaping the character from the inside out. That level of involvement gave him more creative control than most actors ever get in a major franchise. He wasn't trying to disappear into a role, he was trying to rebuild how the audience saw him. Studios noticed, he's locked in for the Batman Part 2 and also teaming up with Bong Joon-ho for Mickey 17, a science fiction project that already has people curious just based on the names involved. That's where he sits now, right at the intersection of massive studio trust and indie credibility. He can sell tickets without selling out, and what's striking is how he's managed to do all this while keeping his personal life mostly offline and his reputation relatively untouched by the chaos that usually follows actors in his position. He's not out there branding himself or trying to cash in on every opportunity. He takes his time, picks his roles carefully, and keeps the rest quiet. But the biggest money isn't always in front of the camera, and Pattinson seems to know that better than most. For someone with global fame and serious earnings, Robert Pattinson keeps his real estate moves quiet. He's not snapping up castles or getting into bidding wars over beachfront palaces. According to property records and media reports, he owns a home in the Hollywood Hills that's more practical than showy, and it's tucked away, not oversized, and certainly not something he flaunts. Years ago, he also purchased a property in London. Again, low profile, not the type splashed across tabloid spreads, and that's been his pattern. Quiet, smart, and built for privacy. He's never been the celebrity who's photographed stepping out of a $500,000 car or giving Architectural Digest a tour of a 10-bedroom house. There's no documented fleet of luxury vehicles or wide collections of rare watches. In fact, during interviews, he often comes off as someone who doesn't really care about status symbols. Once, he joked about living on microwave pasta and admitted he had to learn how to actually cook for himself in his 30s. If there is wealth behind the scenes, and there clearly is, he's not spending it like most of his peers. That kind of financial discipline isn't about being cheap, it's about staying grounded. Pattinson has talked about the pressure that came with sudden fame and how it is easy to get lost in the lifestyle. Maybe that's why he avoids excess. The less attention on how he spends, the more control he keeps over his image and his choices. Avoiding social media also helps. Less noise, fewer distractions, and no need to constantly maintain a brand for the internet. Even off-camera, that quiet approach extends to how he handles business. He doesn't chase startup deals or attach his name to every new venture, but insiders in the film and fashion worlds know he's sharp about contracts and long-term returns. It's not just about getting paid, it's about keeping ownership where it matters. His lifestyle may be quiet, but his connections? Not so much, especially when it comes to high fashion and powerful brand deals. In 2013, Robert Pattinson signed on as the face of Dior Home fragrance. It wasn't a loud campaign at first, but it didn't need to be. The black and white ad, directed by Romain Gavras and shot by Nan Goldin, showed him in a different light. Edgy, confident, a little reckless. It didn't lean on the vampire fame or his tabloid past, it showed him as a man, not a teen heartthrob, and it worked. The campaign went global, and unlike most celebrity deals that fizzle out after a couple of years, this one stuck. More than a decade later, he's still the face of Dior Home, making it one of the most endearing brand relationships in modern fashion. Then there is a reason Dior keeps him. He doesn't just wear the clothes, he fits the mood. Pattinson never comes off like he's trying to be fashionable, whether it's a wrinkled t-shirt on the street or a structured Kim Jones suit at a premiere, he looks like himself. That authenticity is hard to buy. But Dior did. And in return, he gave them ad campaigns that didn't feel like ads. From moody portraits by David Sims to artsy short films, the entire run has felt more like a creative collaboration than a marketing play. This long-term deal hasn't just padded his income, it's expanded his influence. Dior isn't a side hustle, it's a platform that puts him in front of global audiences without needing a new film release. He's at Paris Fashion Week, not as a guest, but as part of the house. That kind of presence changes how people in the industry see you. It says you're more than a role. You are a brand without acting like one. Pattinson has always been stylish, but under all that is a man who's playing the long game with surprising patience. Robert Pattinson has been famous since his early 20s, but you'd be hard-pressed to find him posting selfies or weighing in on the latest viral trend. He's never had a public Instagram or Twitter account. That wasn't some kind of publicity stunt, it's just how he operates. He has said in interviews that he doesn't see the point of sharing everything, and that being mysterious has worked better for him than trying to keep up with the constant noise online. In an interview where visibility is usually the currency, Pattinson's refusal to play along has made him even more interesting. He rarely gives interviews, and when he does, they're carefully chosen. You won't see him doing daily press or hopping on every podcast. Instead, he appears when there's something real to talk about, usually a film, and then disappears again. That approach has helped him avoid the kind of overexposure that wears down a lot of celebrities. Even in press junkets, he tends to give answers that are thoughtful, but never too revealing. There is always a line, and he knows exactly where it is. His long-term relationship with Suki Waterhouse, a model and actress, is a good example of how he handles personal life. They've been together since around 2018, but you wouldn't know it unless you were really looking. They rarely post about each other, rarely do public appearances, and almost never talk about the relationship in interviews. It's no secrecy for the sake of drama, it's just private. When Waterhouse confirmed her pregnancy in 2023 during a live show, it felt genuine, not staged. And when their daughter was born in early 2024, the announcement came quietly, with no flashy photo op or media circus. This kind of silence isn't just a preference, it's a strategy. Pattinson understands that keeping things to himself gives him more control over his image, his work, and his peace of mind. And when he's not working or avoiding the spotlight, Pattinson spends his time in ways you probably won't expect from a global celebrity. Robert Pattinson could easily be living the kind of life that gets splashed across glossy tabloids. Private jets, designer vacations, flashy homes in 5 cities. But instead, he's mostly tucked away in London or LA, doing the kind of everyday things most people wouldn't associate with someone who's earned millions. He plays guitars in his spare time and has set up a small home studio where he records tracks that so far no one's heard publicly. A few clips have floated around online, but he's never released anything official. Music's not a side hustle or an image booster for him, it's something personal, something to do when the cameras aren't rolling. He once described an attempt to cook pasta inside a microwave by wrapping the noodles in aluminum foil and zapping them with sugar and cheese. It didn't go well, obviously, but it wasn't the story itself that stood out, it was the way he told it. Completely unbothered, totally casual, like someone who's not trying to impress or curate a version of himself that fits a celebrity mold. That's been a constant with him. He does interviews when necessary, shows up when it matters, and then vanishes until the next thing. For someone who could be out every night at the most exclusive parties, Pattinson chooses structure. He said in more than one interview that he works best with routine, even if it's odd. That means keeping his days quiet, focused on reading scripts, writing, or experimenting with sounds in his studio. He doesn't shop for the sake of being seen or chase luxury brands just to flash labels. Most of the time, he's wearing old hoodies and beat-up baseball caps. There's nothing ironic about it, he just doesn't care. Even his money doesn't seem to be driving him. He's made enough to walk away from Hollywood, but he stays on his own terms. That kind of discipline doesn't happen by accident. It's not that he's rejecting fame, he just doesn't let it shape him. He's built a life where his creative energy doesn't just get pulled in 100 directions. Behind the hot habits and quiet fame, there's a bigger reason Pattinson keeps things low-key. It's not just preference, it's strategy. Robert Pattinson has never moved like someone trying to cash in quickly. After Twilight, he made it clear he wasn't going to be the guy who took every offer just because the paycheck was big. More than a decade later, that decision looks like less of a gamble and more like a long-term planning. The role he's taken, and the ones he's turned down, have kept him unpredictable. And in Hollywood, that kind of unpredictability is rare. Right now, he's balancing major studio work with smaller, more curated projects. He's continuing his role as Bruce Wayne in The Batman Part 2, scheduled for release in 2026. The first film directed by Matt Reeves was one of the most successful releases of 2022, pulling in over $770 million globally. But even with that kind of box office power, Pattinson isn't turning into a franchise machine. Instead, he's also working with A24 and director Bong Joon-ho on a science fiction movie called Mickey 17, which is based on a novel by Edward Ashton. That combination, studio franchise plus indie credibility, is exactly the space he seems to want. He's not loud about his business moves, but they're working. He's investing in his reputation in long-term projects that hold up over time, rather than whatever's trending that month. It's the opposite of burnout. While some actors fade after one big role or get stuck playing versions of themselves, Pattinson keeps shifting, which means he keeps getting offers that are different and often better. That's how someone ends up with staying power, not just fame, but options. There's also something to be said for how he's managing his energy. He's not on set all year, he spaces things out. That gives him the room to wait for the right roles, the right directors, and the kind of films that let him stretch. He's not trying to be everywhere, he's trying to be good when he is there. It's slower, sure, but it's built to last. So after all the fame, all the fortune, what does life really look like for Robert Pattinson today? You tell me, if you had millions in total freedom, would you hide it or show it off? Leave your thoughts in the comments.